Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I do hope that whatever time it is that you are having a good time. Today I want to talk to you about something that's very important and something that changes what we're doing from writing into academic writing. And that topic is note-taking and avoiding plagiarism. So I want to explain why we do this, and I also want to show you how to do it correctly. So in this week, we're going to learn more about the nature of academic papers and their citation. We're also going to learn some of the dangers that are associated with plagiarism, learn how to take effective notes so that you won't plagiarize, and learn how to properly cite sources of information. So as we've been working, there are 8 stages that we've talked about in the paper writing process. There's selecting a topic, identifying key themes in the topic, producing a thesis statement, and developing the argument for the thesis statement. We've already looked at those, and in the previous flip, we looked at outlining the paper based on the core argument. This flip is about moving from the outline to the draft, and this is the place where we look at how to properly use sources, and we try to understand how to incorporate the work of others into your paper in a way that fits with the academic writing process. So in an academic paper, you are making an argument. The thesis of your paper is a statement, which is the ultimate conclusion of this argument. So if there's one thing that you have learned from this class, I hope you've learned that every academic paper is a type of argument. And every time you make an argument, it should have a certain sort of logical flow, and it should be working towards the conclusion, which comes at the end of your argument. So far, we've focused on the argument aspect of this and how to put together a good argument, also how to turn it into an outline that supports your thesis and responds to potential weaknesses in your thesis. This week, we want to look at the same thing, but with a little bit of a different focus. So again, in an academic paper, you are making an argument. The thesis of your paper is a statement, which is the ultimate conclusion of your argument. Now, when you write an academic paper, it's not just an argument, it must be your unique original argument. So what I mean is that this will have your name on it. This will be something where if you published it, people can say that this is maybe Lee's argument or Kobayashi's argument or something along those lines. It can be something where people look at it and they think it is you. And that's very important for a couple of different reasons. Since your readers believe that this is your argument, you are responsible for what is in the argument. This means you should not use someone else's argument. It means instead, you should tell your readers whenever your paper includes something that is not yours. So whenever anything in your paper is not your argument. This includes both when it is not your idea and when it is not your data. So this is not just ideas, this is not just data, this is either. So if you want to mention something from the Ministry of Education, you need to show where the Ministry of Education said that. If you want to use data from the government or from some other researcher, you need to say where that data is coming from. And a big part of this is we want to look at how you do that. Now, this is a slide you've seen before. In order to make a strong argument, you need to clearly define the major terms. You need to state the major claims and relate them in a clear fashion. You need to identify the general facts we need for this claim and reach our final conclusion, which is our thesis statement. Now, let's tie that into this week's topic. What that means is when you're looking at these major terms, any content that is not yours. When you're looking at these general facts, any content that is not yours. You need to cite a word that we will define later. So you need to cite all definitions, you need to cite all facts, you need to cite all ideas that come from other people. Anything that you take from anyone else, you should mention. If you're watching television, if you're watching Doraemon, and you see something that you use in your paper, then you need to cite Doraemon. If you are reading the newspaper and you see numbers that you want to use in your paper, you can use them, but when you do, remember that you have to cite them. So let's talk about that topic. So for anything that we use or even mention that is not ours, we need to tell our readers. And there's 3 things we need to tell our readers. Who wrote, said, or otherwise made this thing? When Did they write it, say it, or produce it? Where did you read it, see it, or hear it? So who, when, where? Every single time you need to have this information. So this is the goal, and we'll look at both how to do this and where to put the information. So anything that we mention that is not ours, we need to tell our readers, again, who, when, where. So please be very careful. One problem here is that Japanese practices and Western practices are not always the same. So in the Western system, you both need to cite something, put a citation in, every time that you quote, so inyousuru, what someone else said. Again, every time that you paraphrase what someone else said, ikairu. Also, every time that you receive information. So for instance, I don't know the population of Wakanai, which is at the top of Hokkaido. If I look this up on Wikipedia, I need to mention I got the information from Wikipedia. It'd probably be better to get that information from the Japanese government than from Wikipedia. But wherever I got the information, I need to put that into my paper. I need to mention that. So anything you include that's not yours, doesn't matter how you got it, you need to write that into your paper. Here I want to repeat, this is different than some Japanese practices. In some Japanese citation practices, you only need to put sources when there's a direct quote. This is what I've been told. If this is not correct, please write that in the comments. But I have seen many Japanese students and scholars in Japanese only citing things that they quote. In English, it's not just things that you inyousuru, it's things that you learn from any other source. So this is important, and that's basically the most important thing we will look at, is how do you mention these things? So we call this citation. So this is a definition from the Oxford English Dictionary. This is a citation about the word citation. Citation is the act of citing or quoting any words or written passage. It's a quotation, or in law, a reference to decided cases or books of authority. It's also the word for the product of doing citation. So it is both the process and the product. So a citation is a place where you have cited something or made a citation. So this is a little bit confusing, but the important part is always cite when you're supposed to cite. Simply put, citation is showing where you got an idea from. The opposite of citation is the word plagiarism. This also is a citation, in this case, the act or practice of taking someone else's work, idea, etc., and passing it off as one's own, literary theft. So again, this is being described as stealing. This is something where what you are doing is taking what does not belong to you. Or the product of this action. So something that you stole is also plagiarism. A particular idea, piece of writing, design, etc., which has been plagiarized. An act or product of plagiarism. So this is tosaku. This is a type of fusei koi. Hoka no chousa mono ya web 上の情報などから引用、転載、参照したにもかかわらず、出典を明示すること。This is a quotation from the rules at my university for what you're supposed to do. You are required, whether you quote or whether you reference or whether you merely used it to get an idea, to mention where things appear. This is the campus troll announcing that in 2017. So again, this is stealing. So simply put, plagiarism is the stealing of ideas. So if you plagiarize, you are stealing an idea that doesn't belong to you. Now, there are actually two types of plagiarism, so let's get into that. So this is called direct plagiarism. So if you look at a website, you cut and paste words directly from that website into your paper. Or if you look at a book, you type the same words into your paper. Or if you listen to a teacher, you're taking notes in class, or you're just thinking on your own, and you copy that idea directly into your paper. Or you talk to a friend and they give you something good and you just put that right into your paper, what they said. or what they wrote to you via line message or via email, anything. This can also be called copy-paste plagiarism because you took it from somewhere and you pasted it into your paper. Now, let me be clear here. It's plagiarism if you put it in your paper and you do not put a citation. This is second type of plagiarism. This is indirect plagiarism. So direct plagiarism, you have the same words as the source you are stealing from. In indirect plagiarism, you don't. So you look at a website, you write the same idea using different words. So let's say that I read something which talked about Danish people and how much Danish people like Danish pastries. If I change that and I said the people of Denmark enjoy to eat Danish sweets, that's still plagiarism if I'm getting the idea from someone else. Even if I change the words, it still counts as plagiarism. Same thing with a book. If I look at a book, I get an idea and I just write or mention the idea, even if I change the words, that's indirect plagiarism. If I talk to a friend or teacher and I change the words for their idea to make it mine, again, that can be indirect plagiarism if I don't put a citation. If I listen to a lecture from a professor use their argument or illustration, and I don't cite it, plagiarism. Indirect plagiarism is not related to your intent. It doesn't matter if you wanted to steal or if you did not want to steal. This means it's very easy to plagiarize by accident. So part of learning to do academic writing is learning how to make papers in a way where you will not steal ideas even by accident, where you will be careful to mention where you get ideas and who you get ideas from. Plagiarism has very severe consequences. This doesn't matter whether it's direct plagiarism or indirect plagiarism. For people who are in academia, people who work at universities or at research libraries or research institutes or laboratories, the document that contains the plagiarism will almost always be unpublished. So even though it appeared in a journal or in a book, they will send a letter saying, this document is not published anymore. You can also lose your degree. So if you cheated or lied to get a master's degree or a doctorate, they can get rid of the degree no matter how many years it has been since you completed your program. You could also lose your job, or you could lose your career. So in the same way that there was a Japanese scientist who made claims about adult stem cells, she lost her job because she lied. This is also a form of lying, where you will lose your job and your career will be over. For students, the smallest penalty is usually to get a 0 on that assignment. After that, you're often going to end up failing the class. You may need to take a tutorial or extra class to learn more about plagiarism and how to avoid it. You will probably have something on your academic transcript, so on your school record, saying that you plagiarized, and you may be removed from school. At most of the schools that I taught at in the United States, most of the universities, you had 2 strikes. So if you make a mistake once, you'll have to do a remedial course and an entry on your permanent record. If you do it twice, you will be forcibly removed from the school. You will be expelled. Kyosei taigaku. So, we cite. So citation helps you actually. Citation is not just to avoid getting caught if you use other people's ideas. Citation is very valuable. So citation makes clear to your readers which parts are your argument and which parts are not your argument, and that you know what your sources are. So citation protects you. So other people are responsible for their claims. So if someone else says something that is difficult and challenging, they are the one that will have to take the blame and the credit for their argument. If I'm using someone else's argument and I say this is their argument. It also keeps the focus on your thesis statement and outline. So even if they say something that's very controversial, so if they say write a paper about whaling, if you are properly citing that this is their argument, you won't have to be responsible for anything that they say. You will only be responsible for what you say. So this keeps the focus on your thesis statement and outline. It also helps you to avoid the dangers of plagiarism and to avoid wasting time writing words you'll have to delete because they're off topic. Because by having the citations in order, you will know what you're using. Very, very simple. This is an important slide, that's why it has very few words. If you get an idea from anywhere that is not your original idea, you need to cite the source. So I'll just repeat that. If you get an idea from anywhere and it's not your original idea, you need to cite the source. The key to avoiding plagiarism is having the right method. And the method that I'm going to talk to you about is a combination of using notes, in-text citation, and the reference section. So it's not enough just to have your in-text citation and the reference section, because a very important part is we want to avoid direct and indirect plagiarism, which means we need to remember where the ideas we are using are coming from. So to protect yourself from direct and indirect plagiarism, you need to cite where you find anything that you use or mention. Now, in order to cite it, you have to be able to find it again while you're writing and editing the paper and putting the citations into the paper. To do that, you need to take effective notes. So I want to show you a few different types of notes, and I want to talk to you about how effective or ineffective these types of notes are for writing an academic paper. So effective notes are going to be those that use some sort of markup. So things like highlighting, underlining, circling, writing lines, arrows, symbols, and notes in the margins of the page. So the margin is the part that is next to the page. So we want to do that in order to find things again and to organize what we're reading. And we can do this both in printed sources or in photocopies of the originals. So another thing to do is have some sort of system. So you're going to want to be able to assign some sort of short thing to each one of the themes and write that word in the margin whenever you run into that theme. You may also want to use colors. You'd want to assign a color to each one of your themes, and then a color for your thesis, and use color-coded pens, pencils, highlighters, tabs, anything that you can find that'll help make it clear. You may also want to put in little sticky notes or other things, bookmarks, so that you can find things again. So obviously, the smaller the paper, the less you have to worry about looking at lots of different things. The larger the paper, like a graduation thesis, or a graduate paper, or the sort of papers that you'd write that involve research, the more you will need to use these techniques. But let's just rate some of these and see how it goes. So while you're researching, you're also going to want to write down on a piece of paper or in an Excel spreadsheet or in some way where you found different pieces of information. You're going to want to bookmark web pages in it. You're going to want to put those in there and put the quotes as well. There's several different software packages that you can use. Similarly, when you're taking notes in class, you can use the same sort of date, color coding, and acronym so that you can keep track of when the themes that are important to your paper appear, and who said them and why. And with that, you will be able to keep track of things so that you can cite them correctly. So let me give you a bad example. This is a page that has nothing on it. So if we do this, you can't find things from outside of the book, you can't find where on the page things are on, and you don't know what these different parts relate to. There's a little bit of underlining over on the right-hand side, but that's about it. So let's move a little bit better. So this is a different page. I think this is from the same book, but if you look, there's a very small line going into the margin to show when there's been a change and something important. But again, you won't be able to find what you're looking for just if you look at the edge of the book. You also won't be able to tell what themes this applies to and how close it is to your thesis. Similarly, the same sort of level is that there's a line in the side so you can find it. There's a little bit of text in the side as well, but you're not going to know what theme these notes are for, which is going to make it much harder to work from. Moving to something that's a little bit better, you can find where on the page different things happen, and there are little notes here in the margins that will help you to know what the different themes are that each point relates to. In this case, the arguments of the author are being explained in the side margins, so you can use that to know where to find things more quickly when you're writing. At the same time, you won't be able to tell which parts are important from outside of it. So if you use this method, you'll have to go back page by page and find all the important bits. A similar thing that you can do if you're color coding. So this is from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you're color coding, you could do things like laugh in green shows emotion. You could do dialogue that's important in blue. You could emphasize kind of Lucy's reactions in pink. You could use a different coloring scheme. Again, because this is on the pages, you have to look through every page to find it. One that's a little bit better, if you stick a bookmark in, now you can find things from outside of the page. In this particular example, you can't really tell from outside of the page which themes there are. It's just one color here. But if you look, everything is color-coded, so you're going to be able to tell inside of it where different things are from. So here's even better. So here we have a bunch of little sticky notes sticking into the book. This will help you to find it outside of it. They don't appear to be coded by the theme. They appear to all be random, so you're not going to be able to know which theme you're looking for that quickly. So one danger is if there's a lot of important things in one book, if you use just the same sort of bookmark everywhere, you'll have to look at everything again. The goal with this note-taking is twofold. One goal is to make it so that you'll get all of your citations right and you won't accidentally plagiarize. The other goal is that you want to be able to know which themes you ran into. So if you change the topic of your paper, if your thesis no longer uses a theme, or if you need to add a theme, you can find the parts that matter quickly. So this is one that is also useful. Here we have some additional marginal notes. We have themes and theses written there. You can find where it is on the page, but again, you can't tell from outside of the page what themes are on which page. So this will slow you down if you use this sort of technique. So finally, what we could call the gold standard, very high quality highlighting, is here we have different colors for each theme and for your central thesis. You can find it on the page. You can find in the page where each thing applies. And just from outside the book, you can find those pages very, very quickly. So the point of taking good notes is that the better notes that you take, the more you are going to be able to find things again quickly and to cite correctly. So let's move on and let's talk about citation. So when you're citing it, there's two parts to the citation. One part is called the in-text citation. This is at the place in your paper where you use the idea, data, or argument. You'll include brief information about what item and what page. Then in the second part, you also need to put in a reference in a references section. So this part is in your argument. The other part is at the end of the chapter in a references section. So in the references or works cited, you must give complete information about the source so someone can find it in a library or online. This answers the question what book, what website, what page, so that someone can find the larger thing again. And then the in-text citation is where inside of the book, where inside of the website, where inside of the journal article, the information that you found is located. This applies whether you're doing a direct quotation or whether you are paraphrasing, or even if you're just citing the reference and not including any of its contents. Find it. So again, there's two parts, the in-text part and then the reference list, which would be either a full reference list, works cited, or a bibliography. So a bibliography is longer. So biblos means book and graphy is writing. So a bibliography includes all of the books that you think are important on that topic. So it may include books that you did not use. So some types of books have bibliographies where you write many sources that are related to a topic. Most smaller research papers have what's either called a full references list or a works cited. In both of these cases, it is only the things that you used in the paper itself. So you don't include anything else in a works cited or in a reference list. So again, every sentence that contains or mentions anything that is not your original idea needs both an in-text citation and an entry in the reference section, whether that's a reference list or a works cited or a bibliography. So there's 5 different types of in-text citations that I want to mention to you. The first is a full short quotation. The second is a mid-sentence quotation. The third is a block quotation. The fourth is a paraphrase. The fifth is a reference citation. So a full short quotation is when I take one sentence and I use the same words that the person used. In English, I can just put a colon in front of that sentence, and then I can put it in my paper. And anytime that I use a quotation, I then need to explain how that quote relates to what I want to argue. Next one, a mid-sentence quotation. I think this is not allowed in Japanese, but in English this is allowed and encouraged. What a mid-sentence quotation means is that half of the sentence is my words and half of the sentence is not my words. Third, a block quotation. A block quotation is a long quote. When a quote is very long, instead of putting it in the flow of the paper, we will put it into a big block that occurs in the paper indented. So we have to push it in further than the paragraph, and often it is single spaced. So most of the paper is double spaced. Block quotes are single spaced. These will be longer, and again, you have to interpret the block quote after you use it. You have to explain why it was worth including in your paper. If you don't include that, you shouldn't use the block quote. Again, you need to tie it to your argument using your own words to connect their words to yours. But you also need to make sure that you cite it. Fourth one is a paraphrase. So paraphrasing is when you change their quote into your words. So you don't write their words, you write your own words only in your paper, and then you put the in-text citation. Finally, a reference citation. Sometimes you don't want to quote them, you don't want to repeat their ideas, but you want to tell your reader to look at their paper. Or you want to mention something that you won't talk about and say their paper talks about it. So if I was writing a paper about Pacific salmon, if I'm writing about Pacific salmon, I probably shouldn't write about Atlantic salmon. But if someone else wrote a similar paper about Atlantic salmon, then I would give a reference saying, please see this paper that talks about Atlantic salmon. So that's the sort of thing that you would do with a reference citation. Citation style guides. So citation is what you are doing when you show the who, when, where of ideas, information, definitions that you're using in your paper. A style guide is how you correctly and clearly show this in a given paper. So there's more than one style guide. So this is something where each of them has slightly different rules for how you should show the reader who, where, and when, but the goal is always the same. So some of the most common ones in the English-speaking world are the American Psychological Association, often called APA style guide. The Modern Language Association style guide, often used for English literature. And the University of Chicago style, and a modified version called Turabian, after a woman named Kate Turabian. These are the 3 top style guides used in the English-speaking world in America. In every style guide, the rules related to Japanese are similar. So this is from all 3 of those. Japanese words must be written in Romaji, in italics, followed by the English translation in brackets. So in every single style guide, another thing that's true is the list must be in alphabetical order from A to Z by author's last name. In last name, I mean the surname or the family name, the myoji. So in my case, my surname is Komazinski, so I would be under K. My wife is also with K, so Komashin with a K. If my name were something like Kobayashi Kazuya, then it would be the K for Kobayashi. If my name was John Lee, it would be Lee, John. So again, always by the family name. So I'll give a few examples with some Japanese books. So this is T. Kato, 2002, Soufu ni tobe inazo no koto. 2001年 Shin ni tobe inazo kinen koza koen. So again, notice this is in italics for the title of the book. And then in parentheses, about my grandfather, Inazo ni tobe 2001, new Inazo ni tobe Memorial Lecture. Tokyo, the place where it happened. And Kristo Yukai Nihon Nenkai. And again, if it's in Japanese, in brackets, what it was. So the Japan Yearly Meeting of the Society of Friends. Another example, Otsu M 2012, Kristo Yukai Nihon Nenkai to Nitobe Inazo 2012年 Shin Nitobe Inazo Kinen Koza Koen, Japan Yearly Meeting of the Society of Friends. And Inazo Nitobe 2012, New Inazo Nitobe Memorial Lecture, Tokyo, Kristo Yukai Nihon Nenkai, Japanese Yearly Meeting of the Society of Friends, or Japan Yearly Meeting of the Society of Friends. So this is the style for a Japanese book. You must include the information in English as well. This is the style for a Japanese journal article. So Takahashi M, 1995, Nishin Senso to Frendo Kyokai, the First Sino-Japanese War and the Friends Church, Toho Gakuen Daigaku Tanki Daigaku Bu Kyo, Bulletin of Toho Gakuen College of Drama and Music. Toda T, 2003, Philadelphia Frento Nihon Nenkai, 1900年 から1940年 made. And again, you need to put it in English. Philadelphia Friends in Japan Yearly Meeting, 1900 to 1947. Yamanashi Kenritsu Joshi Tanki Daigaku Kiyo. Toda T, Philadelphia ni okeru Shibashiro, Nichibei Kouryu no Kiten to shite. So Shibashiro as a hub of the earliest interactions between Japan and Philadelphia. Yamanashi Kokusai Kenkyu. Yamanashi Global Policy Research, Global Policy Faculty Bulletin, number 9, 60 to 69. So again, one thing that's the same, if it's in Japanese for the title, you have to write it in Romaji and then in parentheses put a translation. Examples from Japanese websites, the Japanese Friends Service Committee, 2016, Shisetsu Ichiran, facilities list, retrieved from, with the URL, Kristo Yukai Tokyo Gekkai, Society of Friends, Tokyo Monthly Meeting, no date. Yukai to wa, what is the Society of Friends? Otomodachi Hoikuen, Friends Nursery School, Ichinen no Gyoji, annual events. So this is the basic style. So we'll go over this in more detail in classes, but this is how we do this. This is important. When you cite things, if you learn them from a teacher in that class, you should be taking notes and you should cite that in your paper. So if you're taking a class on Japanese linguistics, if you learn something about Japanese linguistics in the class, that information belongs to the person who taught that information to you. This is good for you. If they're wrong, if you put their name on it, they will be the one that's wrong. If they're right, if you put your name on it, you're plagiarizing. If they're right and you put their name on it, then you will show that you know how to make good citations. So in this case, teacher's last name, teacher's first initial, date, name of class, name of school, city. So Graham G. So his first name is Gordon, but his family name is Graham. 2010, September 20th. Political Philosophy and Public Theology, Princeton Theological Seminary, Princeton, New Jersey. Schreier P. 2007, April. Introduction to Practical Theology, Azusa Pacific University. If you don't have the exact date, go as close as you can. So if you only know the year, write the year. If you know the year and the month, write the year and the month. If you know the year, the month, and the day, you're good. So in McKee E., 2009, September 29, The English and Scottish Reformations and Puritanism, Princeton Theological Seminary. So again, the course title comes after the date and then the school where you had it. So if it was something here, it could be something like Ishizuka, H, 2016, April 25th, English Education Methods 3, Hokkaido University of Education, Asahikawa Campus, Asahikawa, Japan. So that would be how you would have to cite something like that. Another example, If it was like a guest lecture, so learn from a presentation by a guest speaker or student in class, you would do the student's last name, student's first initial, date, name of presentation, presented at name of class, name of school, city. So Rudatskira P. So his first name is Paul, but his family name is Rudatskira. 2010, April 13th, International Conflict and Reconciliation, Rwanda Panel. Presented at Forgiveness and Reconciliation, Princeton Theological Seminary, Princeton, New Jersey. R. Wagner, 2010, January. Conversation with Ross Wagner, presented at Issues in the Theology of Scripture, Princeton Theological Seminary, Princeton, New Jersey. Again, if you don't have perfect records, just be as precise as you can be. Verheim C. The Theory of Multiple Intelligences, presented at the Old Testament Women and Cultural Ecclesiastical Diversity, Princeton Theological Seminary. So most of these are citations from papers that my wife has written. So that's why so many of them are in Princeton. Things that you learn from a document that you receive, which is not a book or website, also need to be cited. So if your instructor gives you a handout, things you learn from the handout you need to cite. Same basic rule, last name, first name, date, title, city. So Jordan J, 2016, FWCC AWPS questionnaire, Surrey Hills, New South Wales, Religious Society of Friends, Quakers in Australia. Sarkar DK, Testimony DK, Kolkata, West Bengali, Evangelical Friends Mission. Titus R, Goals, Bhopal, MP, Bhopal Yearly Meeting. So this is the basic structure of how these things work. If you learned it in an email, you also need to cite it. So the sender's last name, sender's first initial, date, subject line. So Evans W, 2016, October 22nd, EFCI in India. Let's just move down a bit. Kishi M, 2008, April 23, RE, so anyway. Tamang R, 2016, October 2nd, RE, some information needed. So any of these things can work as the style, so you can use these to make your own later on. Also, things as strange as line count as ways of getting information. Sender's last name, first initial, date, subject line. In this case, we usually say personal to mean that it is your private communication. And then we say it is to the author. So Mitsuhashi Y, 2007, November 7th, The Shout of a Returnee, Personal, Mixi.jp, Social Networking Message to Author. Yamada T, 2008, March 16, Untitled, Personal Facebook Messenger, Social Networking Message to Author. So Zhang Y, 2016, October 21st, Untitled, Personal Line, Social Networking Message to Author. Learn from a personal conversation. So Comic D, 2016, September 27th, Personal Conversation with Author. So author here is the person writing. So De La Cruz C, 2016, May 31st, Personal Conversation with Author, Skype video chat. How does this help you? So what do you gain from doing this? During your research, as you research materials, you will come across many interesting facts about your general topic. Whenever you find something relevant to your thesis or outline, write it or type it or bookmark it and include the page number and the source. So when you're writing, whenever you use one of these facts, ideas, definitions, or arguments you found during your research, make sure to write the citation after it. Then include everything in your references or works cited or bibliography. After you're done writing, please check. Make sure that you have cited a reference every time you use someone else's idea or data. Check to make sure that you put a correct reference in the in-text citation and also in the references and works cited or bibliography. So thank you for spending time with me during this video. I know this may not be the most interesting of topics, but it's a very important topic for learning how not just to write, but to be doing academic writing. Is that in academic writing, it's important to cite other people, to mention the arguments that other people are making. This is part of academic culture. Again, this also helps you, because if they say something and your reader thinks this claim is very strange, if you cite the claim correctly, they will be responsible for what's said in that claim. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that you are enjoying these videos. If you have any questions or comments, please ask during class, or please feel free to leave comments on the video itself. All right, have a good day.